It is Deanna with toolsofenergyprotection.com, your self-love mentor for empaths, highly sensitive people, and star seeds. How's everybody doing today? I am coming on today to talk about a subject that's a little taboo, a little mysterious, and quite a few of you have contacted me about it. And so I figured where there's one, there's many. And so today, what I wanted to talk about is what is stuck in your energy field. As an empath or a highly sensitive person, sometimes you can feel stuck. Sometimes you can feel drained, high levels of anxiety, and you're not sure why. So, one of the things you can ask yourself is, has a loved one recently passed? Because what happens is what I found in my practice um, is that when a loved one passes, they don't immediately cross over or go to the light, or as some people call it, go to heaven. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today because there's quite a few people that have been contacting me recently with a high level of anxiety that they normally don't feel. They feel kind of stuck and really super depressed. And so one of the things I asked them is, has a loved one recently passed? So I'll tell you about one of my case studies, and this might bring the point out a little bit greater. And if you are experiencing this and want to reach out to me, you can contact me with the information down below, and I will be more than happy to help you with this, and will bless two souls. So what do I mean by that? Well, what happens is when the human body can no longer support life for whatever reason, then the soul that is inside the human body comes out. And generally speaking, it will go back to the other side, or to source, or to heaven, or the fifth dimension. And what that means is that during that time, that soul, when it comes out of the body, is consciously aware. You know, it can look around and see things and travel, especially because it now doesn't have a human body. It's much easier. And one of the ways that it will travel is, you know, just by itself, usually around where it expired or died, um, or transformed, since it's going from physical and spiritual to just spiritual. And it'll look around, maybe be around loved ones, and, you know, get ready to cross over. And so some people go immediately into the light. And the way I like to think about this is most humans were born with an umbilical cord, which gave us, you know, nutrients from the host, from the parent, excuse me. And then other folks um, um, may have come in through other means, like, you know, these days we've got science and petri dishes, but eventually they'll be connected to an umbilical cord. And so when the person dies or expires, I like to think of it as one umbilical cord coming into this life and one umbilical cord going out. Because when people are getting ready to pass, they will usually report seeing a bright white light and an oval light. And they will go through that. And on the other side, they might meet their spirit guides or angels or even family members. And we know this because there's many people that have had near-death experiences, and they come back into the human body. And once they're back inside that, you know, human body, they will recall having seen that white light. So my guides have also told me that that's what happens. And so between the time that the physical body can no longer support life and the time that the soul will cross over to go back to spirit or source, there's about 3.5 Earth days. You'll notice that some religions, like Judaism, will usually have the funeral within 3.5 days. And, and that's the reason for that, because that's the amount of time that the soul is given to do whatever it needs to do before it goes back over, crosses over, goes back to heaven, or the other side. So what happens between the time that the soul is no longer in the body and it crosses over. Well, the souls can travel. One of the easiest ways for a soul to travel is to be in somebody's energy field. And this is where we come to my topic today, which is, what's in your energy field? And as an empath, a highly sensitive person, or a starseed, there may be many things that get in your energy field. And those are topics for another day. Today's discussion is, and information being given, is about what happens when a loved one or a deceased person gets in your energy field. So, as you're listening today to the broadcast, I would like for you, or the podcast, I would like for you to stretch your arms straight out, unless you're driving, into a giant letter T, and then either turn in a circle or imagine yourself turning in a circle. And this is your personal energy field, your personal space. You might have been in a grocery store or somewhere where somebody gets close to you and you kind of move away because they feel kind of funny. That's because they're in your personal space. And some of us have bigger definitions and some of us smaller, depending on whether you live in the country or, whether you live in the city. But every human has an energy field. It's also called a toroidal field, or it can be called your chakra or your auric field. And that is the energy that's coming from within your body and your spirit combined, and filling out that space around you. This is normal. And what happens is a disembodied spirit or a discarnate, somebody that's no longer in body, is in spirit form, and they can enter into your energy field. Some of you might have noticed um, feeling anxious after somebody died. And yes, there are actual grieving processes that people go through when somebody passes. This is quite normal. What I'm talking about is outside of that normal grieving process. And I'll give you a couple case studies. If you have seen pictures that sometimes paranormal investigators take, where there's an orb or it looks like a little light sphere in a picture, if it's not dust, that is basically what the orb looks like when a person is deceased. And so that ball of energy is what is their soul. And imagine now that ball of energy entering into your personal energy field. So when you have your arms stretched straight out and you turn in a circle or visualize it, and then kind of fill that in. So it's like an egg shape or a giant oval. Now you have that disembodied spirit moving inside of your energy field. And sometimes when that happens, you might get goosebumps or cold chills. Other times, you may just feel a little off, if you're in an area where there's a lot of disembodied spirits. And they will move into that energy field because it becomes easier for them to exist outside of the body, because they now have a space to be in, which gives them energy. The challenge with that, with having that disembodied spirit in your energy field, whether you're an empath or a highly sensitive person or not, is that your toroidal field, your chakra field, then has a movement that would be similar to thinking about your lungs breathing in and out, expanding and then contracting as you breathe. Your toroidal energy field also has movement, depending on how you're oriented, which is another subject. But think about the energy coming in through the top of your head, going down your spinal column, coming out below your feet, and then circling back up to the top of your head again. And that would be a complete breath, like with the lungs. And so it's constantly circulating, just like the lungs constantly circulate air. And so if you get a disembodied spirit in that orb like, ideal in your head, and it comes into your energy field, Well, now as your auric field or your torus is going through your body, that is going to pick up the energies around you. So that's why sometimes you might feel a little off when you walk in someplace or you know something's happened, because that's entering your chakra space, your toroidal field, and then cycling through the spinal column of your physical body. And so you're actually feeling or sensing that. And if you have a disembodied spirit that is inside of your personal space, every thought, feeling, emotion that that individual had while they were in a human body is in that orb, is in that energy field. And you will begin to feel it and process it. So if a loved one has died, if a loved one has passed, you're actually going to feel all of their emotions. So imagine, a loved one who was constantly anxious or constantly upset. Well, that's going to be in their energy field, in their orb, so to speak. And now that it's in your personal space, you're actually going to be processing those emotions because you can feel the vibrational energy of their soul. Let me say that again. When a person dies or passes, their soul comes outside of their body. You can think about it like an orb. And then that orb comes into your chakra field, your auric field. It disturbs that. It's like, when you swallow something the wrong way and you're trying to cough it out, but your auric field breathes, it circulates, it goes from the top of your head down your spinal column, below your feet, and circles back up again to the top of your head. It can also go the other direction. It can go, some people have it where it comes up through the bottom of their spinal column, goes out the top of their head and around. But it's picking up energy around it constantly. It's processing what it's feeling, sensing, experiencing. So when somebody has passed and they are in your energy field, you are going to begin to feel their thoughts, feelings, and emotions before they passed. So all of the collective emotions from their life. And so for empaths and highly sensitive people, and especially psychic mediums, if you're not able to clear that person out of your energy field and you're beginning to feel those emotions, you may become more highly anxious and more depressed. And I will talk about a couple of case studies that I had, or a couple of clients, so that you can understand this a little bit more. I want you to know, though, that if that is the case and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm totally identifying with this, yes, I feel so drained. I feel very more anxious since a loved one has recently passed. Check in with yourself first and see if you need to get some counseling. There's grief counseling, there's groups to support you during that time. However, if you feel like, oh, it's more than that, or I'm going to grief counseling, then that's when, if you want to reach out to me, I can help you by crossing that person over. And we can do it together and let them go to the other side. And then your energy field is once again clean, or without that kind of energy in it. And it's a very easy process to do. It just takes a little bit of time. And if you are interested in that, you can reach out to me at toolsofenergyprotection.com. There's a place to click on comments if you would like to send me an email and tell me your story. Or if you're ready to have a session, just click on sessions. Again, that's tools, TOOLS, of energyprotection.com. And what we'll do is get a time to work together and help your deceased loved one or friend cross over to the other side. So, first case story. So I had a woman come, excuse me, come to me very early on in my practice. before I knew that I could cross disembodied spirits over. And she was very depressed. She had been working at her job for over 20 years, doing the same thing every day. And her sister had passed a few months earlier, and she was very, very distraught, which is understandable because they were best friends. And she went through grief counseling and she got some help. And she was beginning to emotionally close down and not very functional at all. And she had a hard time going to work. She had a hard time just thinking. That was her main concern. And she said, I just can't think anymore. She said, I can get up and I can go to work. And then it's just like I have no interest. I have a fog, in my mind. So I'm not able to do my work. And I hear you can clear energy. So that's why I'm coming to you today. And so I began to work with her. And the first thing that happened was a picture popped into my head of a beach ball. And I thought, okay, that's really weird. And then the next thing that popped into my head was the ocean. And I thought, okay, this is really weird. I'm attempting to clear this lady's energies to help her feel better, which is a whole different process. And I'm getting these pictures in my head. So I shared them with her and I said, Joan, I am seeing this huge beach ball in my head, in my mind. And I'm also seeing a lot of ocean waves and sand and stuff. Does that mean anything to you? And Joan broke into tears and she said, oh my gosh, that's what my sister and I loved to do as kids. We loved to play with the beach ball on the beach at the ocean. In fact, that was our favorite place to go. And she just sobbed. And I was very surprised because that was my very first time uh, uh, being able to understand that there were spirit beings that could be, or discarnates, that could be in your energy field, in your human energy field. So we were able at that time, my angels came forward and opened up a space for her sister to cross through, and we were able to help her to transition to the other side. Now, what was interesting was when she got done, with the session and left my office, I said, let me know how you're doing. And she actually called me a couple of days later and she said, I can't believe how much better that I feel. I'm not as depressed. I'm not as anxious as before I came to see you. And she said, I truly believe that my sister was able to cross over to heaven. And I want to thank you so much. And that was a very great day for me to know that I could do that, that I could help people that were stuck, that didn't go cross over, to actually go home and be back with Source and Spirit in heaven. And what a tremendous gift that was to me and to Joan and her sister. So again, if you're just joining us, what we're talking about today is empaths, starseeds, highly sensitive people that may feel a huge amount of anxiety or depression after someone passes. And this can be because the person hasn't crossed over and are hanging out in your energy field. So the next question I have from one of the listeners is, well, once they're in your energy field, do they stay there for a long time or do they go visit other people? And so what I found is that a disembodied spirit or discarnate, can travel. Sometimes they'll jump from energy field to energy field. Sometimes they travel without having to be in somebody's energy field or auric field. And it's up to them. They may go from person to person in their family. They may go back to the spot that they passed, trying to figure out what happened. Sometimes they just have unresolved energies, and so they will travel between usually people and not very far. They don't usually travel overseas or great distances. And then they decide whether or not they are going to go into the light or cross over or go to heaven or the other side. And they have a decision to make. And there are times when some people die tragically and very quickly, and they don't understand that they are, as we would call it, dead. They don't understand that their body is no longer living. And so they see the white light, and sometimes they're confused about what that white light is. It's all a blur to them, and they don't cross over. And my understanding at this point in time is that that portal to the other side will stay open for them for 3.5 Earth days. And then once that's done, the portal will close. And I don't know why this is. If any of you have ideas, or have some understanding that I don't, I'm always learning. And you can go to toolsofenergyprotection.com and click under contact and send me an email and let me know what your thoughts are about why it's only open for 3.5 Earth days. I have been told by my guides recently that it is easier for spirits to go back and forth between the other side and here, just due to where we are in space and time. We're at May 24th, 2023, and the veil is thinner, if you will. So I do know that that happens, but not understanding totally why that the hole closes for them to go home after 3.5 Earth days, but it does. Perhaps it just dissipates and they can't find it. Anyway, so when a soul passes very quickly, very tragically, um, all of a sudden you're in your human body, and then the next millisecond you're not in that body anymore. And perhaps you're rising up from the body, looking back, going, "What am I doing here?" And perhaps it's an explosion to where you don't have a body anymore. Those are the ones that seem to have the most trouble understanding where they are. And I get it. If you're in the body and the next thing you know, you're not in the body, what's happened? So, another case study that happened years ago, but still is worth mentioning, is an event in America called 9/11. And there were some folks working in some very tall towers, doing their everyday job. And there was an explosion in their building, and some of the people died instantly. Others, a little bit more tragic. The ones that died instantly, again, they were in a human body and now no longer have a human body, and they had no idea that this was going to happen, or they were passing. And so now here they are, this spirit being, and they're not sure what to do. They're confused. Some of them are caught in what's called a time loop, which is where they remember maybe the last 10, 15 minutes of their existence over and over again, trying to find reason about why they now no longer have a body. And they will linger there. So when that event 9/11 happened, I belonged to a group of people that would get together and have meditations, and we would do it in a circle, and people would put out their thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and we would help clear their energy and make them feel better. And that particular day, I was leading the circle, and so we sent the energy around the room, and everybody connected. And I just felt a really odd, just very heavy emotion. And so I asked my guides what was happening. And they indicated that there were some souls that were stuck in some of the upper level floors of the building from 9/11. And since the buildings were flattened, that space no longer existed for a human to stand on, but it still existed as an imprint for the people that were now out of body. And to imagine a split second of in the body, not in the body, and all the confusion that must have gone on. So what we did on that day in that circle was we took white light and went down to the bottom of that area, and we superimposed our circle over those towers, and we brought that energy up from the very bottom all the way to the tippy top floor. And I felt a lot of souls crossing over that day because we held the space for them to do so. So there were many, many souls that transformed and went home that day. And it was an amazing feeling. You could feel the tingling, you could feel the goose pimples as they were freed and released to go home. All right, so moving right along, I have one more case study that I wanted to share. And I know this is a pretty dense subject. Some of you have been just so curious about this subject, and I'm getting quite a few more calls from highly sensitive people, empaths, and starseeds about folks feeling super anxious, super depressed. They're getting counseling, they're getting some help. Sometimes they're having medication, and they just don't understand why they're not feeling better. So, the last case study I would like to share is a young woman who I worked with recently, and she is not the first one this has happened to. And her significant other had committed suicide. And when this happens, when a person is that despondent and desperate and depressed and whatever else they're feeling, that they take their own life, they often will not cross into the light. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of religious beliefs about what happens after you die, especially if you take your own life, which are not pleasant. And they don't want to go there. So when that light opens up for them, they may choose not to go over because they're afraid of whatever might be on that other side, retribution, hell, eternal damnation, purgatory. There's a lot of other religious beliefs about what happens after suicide. And so that person will often hang out in the energy field of the person that's still in body that they were closest to. And because you can imagine the emotional despondency of someone who commits suicide, and now that energy is in a ball, an orb, if you will, and it's inside someone else's energy field, that person will begin to feel, sense, or know the vibrational frequency of all that that person felt before they took their own life. And that is extremely debilitating to the person that's still in the human body. And the anxiety, the phobias, the fears, the things they feel, sometimes they sense the person touching them or talking to them, or just all kinds of other things that might disturb someone who's still in the human form, in the human body. And so when I was working with this young woman, uh, the soul of the person who had taken his life was able to speak to me, and I can hear them. It's a vibrational frequency that they send out. It's a transmission of light, if you will. And mediums, if you're a psychic medium, you'll know how this works. And I was able to talk to him a little bit about his passing and why he chose to exit. It was, a lot of depression and anxiety. And then she was, able to share her thoughts with him and, say goodbye, which is a nice closure. And then we asked the angels of light to open up that portal so that he was able to cross over safely to the other side and be totally cleansed, so that when he goes back to source, he is received with open arms and with love and with understanding. And then after that, she felt better. Yes, she was still grieving. Yes, she still had some anxiety from the trauma that she'd been through. She told me that she did feel a little lighter and really able to now walk forward and process what had happened in her life. So those are 3 different instances of case studies of what I have found when a disembodied spirit or discarnate is hanging out in someone's energy field. And if you are listening and you're like, oh, I so identify with this, I really, really, really would like to have this taken care of, or at least get some more information, you can go to toolsofenergyprotection.com. That's my website. and you can click on sessions and pick out a time we can get started. Or if you have any additional questions, just press on comments or contact and write your story in there and send it to me, and I will look at your email and then reach out to you. So I really super appreciate everybody joining me today um, for Empath Talk. And next week we'll have Diana back and we'll talk about some additional subjects. But this is something that I wanted to share with all of you. It is a heavy subject, but it is so needed. So again, I am Deanna, and I am at toolsofenergyprotection.com. And I'm so glad that you joined me today. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Have a great and wonderful day. If this has helped you and you know somebody who might be going through this, please feel free to share this with them so that they might have some closure in their lives. Have a great and wonderful day.